the ultimate sacrifice that would cover the sins of the world. Animal sacrifices couldn't do it. And we've spent time all last year showing how even in the Old Testament they understood that. God didn't want animal sacrifices. Well, then why did he prescribe them? To teach Israel about the horrors of sin and the effects of what is required in order for what happens when you break the covenant. Okay? And it kind of leads into what I wanted to review as we near the end of the churches. And I want to take maybe the next 20 minutes and hopefully answer that question by doing that. By saying this. You know, I keep saying, you know, when we read the book of Revelation, you get a blessing. Right? Where do I get that from? Chapter 1, verse 3. Right. Because it says, blessed is he who reads aloud and those who keep what is written in here. Right? Because the time is short. Is that the only blessing in this book?
No.
How many are there? 7. And what does 7 mean? Covenant. And what's a covenant? Marriage. And what is a marriage?
Agreement.
Okay. A relationship. That's it. Between husband and wife, or when we talk about covenant in relationship, God and his people, right? The way that God relates to his people is in covenant form, just like a man and a woman relate to each other in the covenant of marriage. Two people who were entirely different come together and then they become one. And then because of their love is so great, it creates a whole other person. Right? That person that comes from that union of the husband and wife is the product of their love. Right? In the same way, God builds his family the same way. He covenants with one man, but because of that, a whole nation is blessed. Or the whole world is blessed. Right? So God extends his family through covenant. Now, one of the things that we haven't spoken about in all of our journeys about covenant, and this was just occurring to me as we near the end of the messages to the churches, is what happens when you break the covenant? Ever thought of that? Because this is going to have a big bearing into as we get deeper into the book of Revelation. Because if the whole book is about covenant, marriage, all right, then part of that is what happens when that covenant is broken? It's damaged, right? Is it irreparable? No. Does God always make provision to bring back? Yes. That is the whole message of the prophets. Now that I'm studying the prophets and getting ready for my final, that is the message of the prophets. Okay? Is that the relationship is damaged because of sin. Sin breaks the covenant that you've made with God. You are unfaithful, Israel. Right? But is it irreparable? No. Does God divorce Israel? No. Okay? But there is a penance that needs to be exacted. Right? And what I want to show you ever so briefly, and knowing me, you know what that means, is to get a little history about how this covenant breaking and the relationship with it occurs. So guess where we need to start? In the beginning. Turn to Genesis 3. In the beginning. It's all back to the garden again. Genesis chapter 3. I'm going to try and go through this briefly. If someone wants to go like this to me when the big hand gets on the 12, do so. But this is extremely related to what is in the book of Revelation. Because if there are 7 blessings for reading the book, 7 it is covenant, and you know that there are other 7s throughout the book. It's covenant, covenant, covenant. Then what do you think is being emphasized in this book of Revelation?
Covenant.
Covenant. So we better know what we're talking about here. And what better way to do it than to see from the beginning all the way down what covenant has meant since the beginning. Okay? So we're going to start with the first covenant, and that's with Adam. So in Genesis chapter 3, and might as well just read this, because I keep alluding to it, but let's read the whole thing for once. I may regret it, but we'll do it. God comes down. He says, "Where are you?" Verse 12 says, the man said, "The woman whom you gave to be with me, she gave me fruit of the tree, and I ate." Meaning, verse 13, then the Lord said to the woman, "What is this that you have done?" The woman said, "The serpent beguiled me, and I ate." Less meaning. It's true, right? Adam passes the buck. She does too, but in more of a real way. Just note that, ladies. Just note that. Yeah, we sinned too, but we fessed up to it. Not saying Adam didn't, but Adam did. Okay? Just saying. The Lord said to the serpent, "Because you have done this, cursed are you above all cattle, above all wild animals. Upon your belly you shall go, and dust you shall eat all the days of your life." Here's the key. "I will put enmity between you and the woman, and between your seed and her seed. He shall bruise your head, and you shall bruise his heel." In the midst of their sin, God gives a promise of a Redeemer. And it comes through the person who made the better confession to God. Did you note that? Who does it come through? The woman, not the man. Did you catch that? To the woman he said, "I will greatly multiply your pain in childbearing. In pain you shall bring forth children, yet your desire shall be for your husband, and he shall rule over you." And to Adam he said, "Because you have listened to the voice of your wife, and have eaten of the tree of which I commanded you, you shall not eat of it. Cursed is the ground because of you. In toil you shall eat of it all the days of your life. Thorns and thistles it shall bring forth to you, and you shall eat the plants of the field. In the sweat of your face shall you eat bread, till you return to the ground. For out of it you were taken. You are dust, and to dust you shall return." So he basically puts Adam in his place. What do you mean? Well, by sinning, what was the purpose of the sin?
To become like God.
They wanted to be God without God. And God just now reminded Adam, "Lo, homie, you are dust, and you're going to return to the dust." Got it? Good. Now, verse 20. The man called his wife's name Eve, because she was the mother of all the living. Now, here's the key. Look how God provides for the sin of Adam and Eve. This is something that's usually overlooked, but it is a theme that goes through. They broke the covenant, right? Yes. God provided a promise of a Redeemer, verse 15, and he provides covering for them. And the Lord made for Adam and for his wife garments of skin and clothed them. Did you see that? Now, where did he get those skins? An animal. What happened to the animal? It had to have died, right? In order to take the skin off of it to cover Adam and Eve. This is the basis of the sacrificial system from this point on. When you break the covenant, somebody has to pay for it. In this case, a substitute, an animal, had to die in order to cover them. Yes?
Yes.
That's the essence of covenant and covenant breaking. If you break the covenant, someone has to pay with death. Someone has to die. Why? Romans 3:23. The wages of sin is death. The payment for sin is death. What do you get from sin? Death. So when sin happens, somebody has to pay for it. Got it? That was from the beginning. God established a covenant with Adam and Eve. They broke it. Someone had to die. Now, let's move the story forward. Genesis 9. Who was the next covenant made with? Noah. Did anyone die in that?
A lot of people.
Yes. Except for 8 people, a whole world died. And then after the ark had landed, this is what happens. Where is it? Chapter 8, verse 20. If you want, go back to verse 15. God tells Noah to go out of the ark. Verse 18, Noah went forth. And then verse 20 says, Noah built an altar to the Lord and took of every clean animal and of every clean bird and offered burnt offerings on the altar. So after the flood, to cleanse the earth, Noah makes a sacrifice of thanksgiving. Okay. A burnt offering. And the Lord smelt the pleasing odor. And the Lord said to his heart, I will never again curse the ground because of man, for the imaginations of man's heart is evil from his youth. Neither will I ever destroy every living creature as I have done. While the earth remains, seed time and harvest, cold and heat, summer and winter, day and night shall not cease. Chapter 9 is the covenant God makes with Noah. Did somebody die? Yes. Yeah. Not only the evil in the world, but these animals that Noah sacrificed. Yes? You see the connection between covenant and covenant breaking. Now, Genesis. Let me see. Where is it? Genesis 15. Where is it? Genesis 12. Genesis 15. Who's the next guy he makes a covenant with? Abraham. Genesis 15, verse 7. And he, God, said to him, Abram, I am the Lord who brought you from Ur of the Chaldees to give you this land to possess. But he said, O Lord, how am I to know that I shall possess it? He said to him, bring me a heifer, 3 years old, a she-goat, 3 years old, a ram, 3 years old, a turtle dove, and a young pigeon. And he brought all of these, cut them in two, and laid them each half over the other. But he did not cut the birds in two. And when the birds of prey came down on the carcasses, Abram drove them away. So get this picture. Abraham had already been given the promises in Genesis chapter 12 about a great name, a great nation, and a great blessing. Didn't we hear that recently? Yeah. Remember that? Yes, our readings. Remember? I hope everyone thought of the Abrahamic covenant. The three things, right? In Genesis 15, God establishes the covenant. He says, how do I know all of this is going to come to pass? God makes a covenant with Abram. And the way he does it is he takes these animals, basically cuts the big animals in half laterally, separates the pieces into two halves, except for the birds. He just put them on either side. So you got to get a picture of this. So you have one animal cut like this, cut in half. Right?
Okay.
Bloody mess in between. Okay?
You said they put it on top of the other one. Oh, that's what you're illustrating?
To cut them in half and to separate them, because we will continue with that.
And then they put the two halves together on one of them.
Then there was another animal here, cut in half. Hooves, right? Hooves. Bloody mess. And then one bird, and then another bird over here, right? Okay. I'm running out of time as always, so I'm going to jump ahead a little bit. What happens is, you notice it says that the birds